At my sister's wedding, I was ordered to stand near the wall so you wouldn't ruin the family photos. My seat, claimed by her husband's aunts +1. Then I walked up to the gift table, picked back my envelope, and proclaimed, "Don't worry, I'll stay out of the frame forever." She came rushing as I proceeded. I, 32M, thought I knew what family betrayal looked like until my sister's wedding day. The morning of her wedding, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror adjusting my tie for the third time. I'd spent 2 months' salary on the perfect gift, taken 3 days off work, and driven 8 hours to be there. My sister and I had our differences growing up, but blood was blood. I genuinely believe this was our chance to rebuild what we'd lost over the years. I should have known better when she didn't include me in the wedding party. The venue was stunning. One of those old converted barns with fairy lights and mason jars that cost more than my monthly rent. I arrived early, wanting to help with any last-minute preparations. The coordinator, a sharp-eyed woman with a clipboard, directed me to the family section. My chest swelled with pride as I walked toward the front rows, nodding at relatives I hadn't seen in years. Then my sister appeared. She looked radiant in her dress, but her expression darkened the moment she spotted me. She marched over with that familiar determined stride that had terrified me as a kid. Without any pleasantries, she informed me that I needed to move. The front rows were for immediate family only, she said. I reminded her that I was her brother, but she clarified that immediate family meant her new husband's family and the wedding party. The sting was sharp, but I swallowed it. I asked where I should sit instead. Her response hit me like a physical blow. She told me to find somewhere in the back, preferably near the wall where I wouldn't be visible in the ceremony photos. She didn't want me ruining the aesthetic of her perfect day. The way she said it, so matter-of-factly, like I was a piece of furniture to be rearranged, made my stomach drop. I stood there processing her words while she continued. She explained that her new mother-in-law had very specific ideas about how the wedding should look, and my presence in the photos would be problematic. She suggested I could watch from the side, where I'd still see everything but wouldn't interfere with the professional photographer's shots. The rational part of my brain told me to just comply. It was her day, after all, but something deeper was screaming that this was wrong. This wasn't about seating arrangements or photo aesthetics. This was about her being ashamed of me, of our family, of where we came from. I found a seat in the last row, right next to the wall as instructed. The ceremony began, and I watched my sister marry a man I'd met exactly twice. During the vows, she spoke about finding her real family, about how love meant surrounding yourself with people who elevated you. Every word felt like a dagger. After the ceremony, I approached the reception area, hoping things would improve. The coordinator handed me a small card with a table number. Table 12. I walked through the elegantly decorated space, past tables 1 through 11, all filled with people laughing and chatting. Table 12 was in the far corner, partially hidden behind a decorative screen. When I reached my assigned spot, I found my chair occupied by a woman I didn't recognize. She was middle-aged, wearing an expensive dress, and deep in conversation with the others at the table. I politely informed her that this was my seat, showing her my card. She looked at me with barely concealed disdain and explained that she was the aunt of the groom's +1. She'd been given this seat by the bride herself because the other tables were full. She suggested I find somewhere else to sit or perhaps stand by the wall where I'd be more comfortable. The wall again. Always the wall. I scanned the room looking for an empty chair, but every table was full. The coordinator, when I approached her, apologized profusely but explained that they were at capacity. She offered to bring me a chair from the back, but there wasn't really anywhere to put it except by the wall. I stood there for 20 minutes, watching my sister laugh and dance with her new family while I remained invisible in the corner. Guests kept bumping into me as they passed by. A waiter asked if I was lost. A child pointed at me and asked her mother why that man was standing alone. That's when I saw it clearly. This wasn't an oversight or poor planning. This was intentional. My sister had systematically erased me from her special day. I was the embarrassing reminder of her past, the brother who didn't fit the image she was trying to project. The gift table sat near the entrance, covered in elegant wrapped packages and envelopes. My contribution was there, a thick envelope containing a check for $2,000. Money I'd saved for months, skipping meals and avoiding social events to give her the perfect wedding gift. I walked over slowly, my heart pounding. The envelope had my name written on it in my own handwriting. I picked it up, feeling its weight. $2,000. More than I'd ever spent on anyone else, including myself. Several guests noticed me at the gift table. A few smiled, probably thinking I was adding another present. Instead, I slipped the envelope into my jacket pocket and stepped back. The music was loud, the conversation boisterous. I raised my voice just enough to be heard by the nearby tables. I announced that I didn't want to ruin any more family photos by standing too close, so I'd be staying out of the frame forever. I wished everyone a lovely evening, and started walking toward the exit. The reaction was immediate. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. The music seemed to fade as people processed what they'd just witnessed. I kept walking, my legs feeling stronger with each step. My sister appeared at my elbow before I reached the door. Her face was flushed, her voice urgent as she asked what I was doing. I explained that I was simply following her instructions, staying out of the frame, out of the way, out of her perfect day. She grabbed my arm and insisted we needed to talk privately. She pulled me toward a side room, away from the staring guests. Once we were alone, she demanded to know what my problem was. This was her wedding day, she said. Couldn't I just be supportive for once? I asked her to define supportive. Was it supportive to drive 8 hours and spend 2 months' salary on a gift? Was it supportive to take vacation days I couldn't afford? Was it supportive to stand by a wall like a piece of furniture while a stranger took my seat? She insisted I was being dramatic. The seating arrangement wasn't personal, it was just logistics. The photo thing was about creating beautiful memories, not about rejecting me. She said I was making everything about myself when it should be about her happiness. I pulled out the envelope and showed it to her. I told her that if I wasn't worthy of being treated like family, then I wouldn't burden her with family obligations. She stared at the envelope, finally understanding what I'd done. Her tone shifted immediately. She said she hadn't realized how upset I was, that there had been miscommunications with the planning. She promised we could fix the seating situation, that she'd make sure I had a proper place at the table. She reached for the envelope, insisting that I was overreacting. I stepped back, keeping the envelope out of reach. I told her that the money wasn't the point. It was what the money represented. It represented months of sacrifice, of believing that family meant something, of thinking that love went both ways. She started crying then, mascara running down her cheeks. She said she'd been stressed about the wedding, that her new mother-in-law had been pressuring her about everything being perfect. She admitted that she'd been trying to impress people who didn't really matter. For a moment, I wavered. This was my sister, the girl who used to build blanket forts with me, who'd taught me to ride a bike. But then I remembered the look in her eyes when she'd told me to stand by the wall. That wasn't stress talking. That was her true feelings finally surfacing. I told her I understood that she was under pressure, but that didn't excuse treating family like strangers. I explained that I'd driven 8 hours to celebrate her happiness, not to be hidden away like a shameful secret. She begged me to stay, to give her a chance to make things right. She said she'd announced to everyone that I was her brother, that she'd been wrong to treat me poorly. She promised things would be different. I looked at her standing there in her beautiful dress, surrounded by the life she'd chosen, and I realized that we'd grown into different people. She valued appearances and social status above genuine relationships. I valued authenticity and loyalty above image. I told her I loved her and always would, but that I couldn't be part of a family that was ashamed of me. I wished her well in her marriage and hoped her new family would give her the acceptance she was looking for. She followed me to the parking lot, still pleading. Other guests had gathered near the windows, watching the drama unfold. I could see her new husband among them, looking confused and annoyed. This was exactly the kind of scene she'd been trying to avoid. I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing in the parking lot in her wedding dress. In my rearview mirror, I watched her new family emerge from the venue to comfort her. They surrounded her with the kind of immediate support I'd never received from her. Update 1. The next morning, I woke up in a hotel room 200 miles away. My phone showed 47 missed calls and countless text messages. My sister, my parents, various relatives, and even some family friends had all reached out. The messages ranged from angry to pleading to confused. My parents called me selfish and dramatic. They said I'd ruined my sister's wedding over a seating arrangement, that I'd embarrassed the entire family. They insisted I needed to apologize immediately and return the gift money. Some cousins supported me, saying they'd witnessed how I'd been treated and thought it was wrong. Others sided with my sister, arguing that weddings were stressful and I should have been more understanding. The most interesting message came from my sister's new mother-in-law. She'd somehow gotten my number and sent a text expressing her disappointment in my behavior. She said she'd heard so much about me from my sister and had been looking forward to meeting me properly. I almost laughed at the irony. My sister had spent months complaining about me to her new family, painting me as the problematic brother who couldn't be trusted to behave appropriately. Then she'd acted surprised when they'd expected her to minimize my presence at the wedding. I didn't respond to any of the messages. I needed time to process what had happened and decide how to move forward. Update 2. A week later, I returned home to find my sister waiting in my apartment parking lot. She looked exhausted, her usual polished appearance replaced by sweatpants and messy hair. She'd been crying. She told me she'd been thinking about our conversation all week. She admitted that she'd been wrong to treat me the way she had, that the stress of wedding planning had brought out the worst in her. She said she'd realized that in trying to impress her new family, she'd lost sight of what really mattered. I listened without interrupting as she explained how the wedding had continued after I left. Her new husband had been furious about the scene, blaming her for creating drama on their special day. His family had spent the remainder of the reception discussing my behavior and questioning what kind of family they'd married into. She tried to defend me, explaining that I'd been hurt by the seating situation and the photo comments. But her explanations had only made things worse. Her new husband had asked why she'd invited me if she'd known I was going to cause problems. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to hide me away to avoid embarrassment, she'd created exactly the kind of scene she'd been trying to prevent. She pulled out an envelope, a different one from the gift I'd taken back. Inside was a check for $2,000, written from her personal account. She said she wanted to give me what I'd originally planned to give her, as a gesture of apology and love. I stared at the check, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Part of me was touched by the gesture, but another part recognized it as another transaction, another attempt to solve an emotional problem with money. I handed the check back to her and told her that our relationship couldn't be repaired with money. What I'd wanted was respect, acknowledgement, and inclusion. What I'd gotten was segregation and shame. She broke down completely then, admitting that she'd been embarrassed by our family's background. We'd grown up working class while her new husband came from old money. She'd been trying to reinvent herself, to fit into a world that had always seemed out of reach. I felt sorry for her in that moment. She'd achieved everything she'd thought she wanted, the perfect wedding, the wealthy husband, the social status. But she'd sacrificed her authenticity and her family relationships to get there. I told her I understood her motivations, but that understanding didn't erase the hurt. I explained that I'd spent years trying to build a relationship with her, only to discover that she'd been ashamed of me the entire time. She insisted that she loved me and had never meant to hurt me. She said she'd been caught up in trying to impress people who didn't really matter, and she'd lost sight of the people who did. I wanted to believe her, but actions spoke louder than words. Even now, her apology felt calculated, motivated more by the consequences of her behavior than by genuine remorse. Update 3. 3 months have passed since the wedding. My sister has called several times, each conversation following the same pattern. She apologizes, explains how much she misses me, and asks what she can do to make things right. I've been honest with her. The damage to our relationship isn't something that can be fixed with grand gestures or emotional appeals. Her marriage has been rocky from the start. Her new husband's family never fully accepted the drama from the wedding, and they continue to view our family as problematic. She's caught between two worlds, the one she came from and the one she's trying to join, and she's finding that she doesn't fully belong in either. My parents have slowly come around to understanding my perspective. They initially sided with my sister, but as more details emerged about how I'd been treated, they've begun to see the situation differently. My mother admitted that she'd been so focused on the wedding being perfect that she'd ignored the obvious signs of how I was being marginalized. The most significant change has been in my own mindset. For years, I'd been trying to earn my sister's approval and acceptance. I'd attended every family event, remembered every birthday, and made countless sacrifices to maintain our relationship. I'd been so focused on being a good brother that I'd ignored how one-sided the effort had become. Taking back that envelope wasn't just about the money. It was about taking back my self-respect. It was about refusing to continue investing in a relationship that didn't value me. I've started building new relationships with people who appreciate me for who I am, not who they want me to be. I've reconnected with old friends, joined new social groups, and focused on my own growth and happiness. My sister's wedding gift to me wasn't the drama or the hurt feelings. It was the clarity. She showed me exactly where I stood in her life, and that knowledge, painful as it was, has been liberating. Some people have criticized my decision to take back the gift, calling it petty or vindictive. But I don't see it that way. I see it as drawing a boundary, as refusing to participate in my own diminishment. The envelope sits in my desk drawer now, uncashed. It's not about the money anymore. It's about the principle. It's a reminder that I have value, that I deserve to be treated with respect, and that I don't have to accept crumbs from people who should be offering me a seat at their table. My sister may have gotten her perfect wedding photos, but she lost something more valuable in the process. She lost a brother who would have done anything for her, who would have supported her through any challenge, who would have been there for her when the fairy tale ended. I hope she finds the happiness she's looking for, but I won't be standing by the wall waiting to see if she does. I'll be living my own life, surrounded by people who see me as worthy of being in the frame. The final lesson from all this. Sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to walk away. Sometimes staying out of the frame forever is exactly the right choice.